Hi, everyone. This is Stephen Pitalo from Corporate Communications at SCOA, and I am back with SUMICAST. And today we are talking to Jamie Winslow, our Senior Director of Government Affairs. Jamie, good to see you.
Stephen, thanks for having me on SUMICAST. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it. I did see your past show with our old general manager, Yoshimura-san.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I'm happy that I finally got a call to appear. So, appreciate it.
Great. So let's go ahead and just start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, Jamie?
Well, not to go too far back, but I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and moved to the DC area when I was young, Rockville, Maryland, maybe most famous as the song "Don't Go Back to Rockville" from REM.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I
Uh,
remember that.
yeah. So it's a suburb of DC. My father was a professor at George Washington University, and we moved to Rockville, Maryland, I think when I was about 4 years old.
And where'd you end up going to college?
Well, my father was a professor at GW, and they actually also recruited me to play college golf there. And so I ended up at George Washington University playing college golf undergrad. And I used my father's benefits as a professor to also get my MBA at GW. So I didn't go far from home, you know, 10 stops on a metro line is where I went to college and grad school.
Oh, so what is it about, I guess, politics that piqued your interest and made you want to actually pursue a career that was sort of in this field?
Well, getting into government affairs for me traveled a different road than a lot of people in the business of government affairs now. A lot of people are political science majors, have worked on the Hill, maybe worked for in their state capital for a governor. I didn't follow that. I first started working at a sports marketing agency called ProServe right out of college. I had some great experiences there, including getting to play golf with Michael Jordan several times when he was first learning to take up the game.
Did you do better than him? Did you get a better score than him?
Oh yeah, he was just taking up the game, and I was a Division I college golfer. So if I couldn't beat a beginner, regardless of whether he was the greatest basketball player in the world, but after having that first job, it sent me back to school that I really needed to know something about business. I was a philosophy major undergrad that didn't really translate to the real world. I went back to get my MBA in finance and investments, and Sumitomo was recruiting, for an entry level position at the university. And, I applied for it and I ended up going to work for a market research company that had Sumitomo as a client. And once I got my MBA, Sumitomo hired me. I started off doing World Bank liaison work, so it was more in line with my MBA. But as the office evolved, it evolved away from development bank business. I know we're getting a bit back into development bank business like USXM and those things. But over the years, we kind of went away from that business, and I started doing macroeconomic and geopolitical analysis, mainly working through the think tanks that we were members with here in DC, groups like Center for Strategic and International Studies, think tanks like that. And then continuing on the evolution, we got into as the nature of Sumitomo's business changed, we added government affairs to that business intelligence role that the office had played. Back then when I was first starting, say a majority of our work was done for Tokyo, and now that's completely flipped where we work closely with our New York office and our US business. So
Okay.
my role was it was a lot different than other people on the Hill who go right into politics, work on the Hill, and then parlay that into a lobbying position at a company. I kind of started here at Sumitomo more on a finance that was along with my MBA, and the office evolved and I kind of evolved with it. But to answer your original question, you can't get away from politics when you grow up in DC and you go to school here. It's always around you.
No. Well, That's interesting. Now, so you came to work for Sumitomo. You came to work for Sumitomo. You begin working for us in Washington. And I guess over the years, come to understand certain things about that type of relationship, how to do your best work under different challenges. And so I guess I wanted to ask, how in the beginning did you figure out how to talk to people about Sumitomo's offerings to, people who are interested, and how did that kind of connect to how Sumitomo thinks of long-term investment and those type of risks in the US?
Whew, that's a big question, and I think I think we're still trying to figure that out 100%. What's interesting about Sumitomo and this and government affairs is something that every business group and every office has to work with, is that we have a rotating staff. And this might be the first time right now that the Washington office doesn't have a rotating staff person in it. And so you always had to adapt to, what the rotating staff members were focused on. And sometimes it was geopolitics, sometimes it was direct government affairs. But it's difficult to explain to members on the Hill and staff on the Hill what Sumitomo is. Most of the time we get, are you guys the bank? Or I know you as the tire company, or I know you as, Sumitomo Metal, just a couple months ago, a colleague, Shohei Yoshida, and I got called into the Commerce Department, and it was right after, the not trade agreement, but trade agreement between the US and Japan. We got called into Commerce, and they said, how are you guys going to take advantage of this 500 plus billion dollars Japan has agreed to invest in the US? How about shipbuilding? And we had to explain we weren't a shipbuilding company, and so, one of the things that we often do is when we meet members of Congress or their staff or even people in the administration is to explain what Sumitomo is, what they do, what our footprint is in their district, what our footprint is across the country. And that's on the outside. Internally, we do a number of things to get out the message of what we do here in Washington. We try and look at it as our business groups should be our clients, and our subsidiaries are our clients. We're here for them to offer government affairs services wherever they may need it. It's not our job to go out and lobby or do business intelligence if they don't want it, right? We're not here to get in their way or to make things more difficult for them. But if they do need our help, we have a network here, our own personal networks. We're members of trade associations that extend our networks. We're members of think tanks, so we can have input in all the kind of white paper and policy position papers they put out. And we also have a number of consultants, including lobbying consultants here, where they can use to, explain their businesses or to advocate for, the best public policy that would help them.
Okay. And along those lines, when people think about what government affairs means, it's kind of a large umbrella, it would seem. Now, how can you talk to us, maybe give an example or something, or just the overall idea of how the insights that you give business people in SCOA flow back into some of the decision making in that leadership and in the business group general managers, how that kind of works?
Yeah, so to explain one thing, kind of unique in the Washington office is it's divided into two sections. So Ryoji Watanabe, he runs our business intelligence. I like to call it competitive intelligence. He runs business intelligence. And our general manager, Yasuko Fumura, runs the lobbying and advocacy side. And I kind of sit on more on the we're a small office, 6 people. So we all do a little bit of everything. But my role is to be mainly on that government affairs side. What we do here is, yes, we inform back to executives both in Japan and up in New York. I know one of the big projects Ryoji and Keanu worked on was a kind of game planning system about what would happen if China attacked Taiwan, right? And so they put together, what would be the implications for the business on that. That's on the competitive intelligence side. They deal more with these high level kind of issues, whether it's a geopolitical issue or macroeconomic issue. Down on the government affairs side, we're a little bit, they're macro, we're a little bit more micro. So we might work with different business departments or subsidiaries. And so, some of the ways we try and get this information out is, I know Ryoji and Hyanu present at the managers meeting. We do a lot of presentations. So the last one I did was for credit managers. We put out a blog each week that you can find in Focus magazine, write up memos, and then individual networks that we have. Some good examples of kind of the work we did last year. There was, everybody's heard of it. It was the reconciliation bill, better known as the One Big Beautiful Bill. We did lobby some of the issues on that and did have some success. One was on a tax issue called Section 899, which was really controversial tax policy within the bill. And it was kind of designed by the White House as a revenge tax or retaliatory tax against foreign countries. And it would have been, a negative for our company. So we were among the groups that lobbied against that. And we did that directly from this office. Sometimes we lobby through our trade associations. You don't want the Sumitomo name always out front on every type issue. And so a common thing in Washington is to lobby through your trade associations. So we do that with the National Association of Manufacturers and also with the Global Business Alliance, which is unique. They only represent foreign subsidiaries in the United States. So no quote unquote American companies. Doing some of that work. Last year was commenting directly on sustainability. There was going to be a lot of regulations that, especially in California, that would have been difficult for us to kind of gauge and put together all the way down our supply line. And so I know the sustainability department, worked directly through us and NAM to make sure their comments were included in NAM's comments back to the administration. We've done regulatory work for some of our steel companies, like Steel Summit comes to mind. They had an issue with, they were having a lot of their product sitting in the warehouse or sitting on docks, not being able to get to where it needed to be. And it was simply a regulatory issue. They weren't registered under what is called the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, which is called CTPAT. And really, we had to dig in and find out that that was the problem. And once we got them registered under that regulation, things started to flow better for them. So you're right, government affairs can, some government affairs offices here in Washington are strictly lobbyists, right? They're up on the Hill, marching to offices every day, advocating for certain legislation, helping offices draft bills. Others are more regulatory in focus. So they have technical people here where when the regulations of a bill are being written, they want to make sure it's written correctly. We're kind of a jack of all trades where we'll do what we need our offices to do. Some of the things I know today, Yoshida-san is actually going up to the Hill to meet with Congresswoman Sanchez as part of Keidan-Ren, which is kind of that the Japanese trade association. So he's not going to have the Sumitomo name up front, but he's going to be part of Keidan-Ren. Earlier this week, I met with Senate Finance to talk about all the different trade issues that are going on that kind of skip Congress, but that the administration puts in place. And today I'm actually meeting with Senator Schumer's office to talk tax and trade as well. So kind of cover the gamut. regulatory,
Sure.
legislative,
Watch out for
type
that.
issues.
Watch out for that Senator Schumer. He's got a bit of a potty mouth lately.
Well, I'm not going to meet the senator directly. I'm not going to
Oh,
meet the
okay.
minority leader. That's one of the things is, people always ask me within Sumitomo, oh, did you meet, Speaker Johnson, or did you meet Senator Schumer? And it's, of course, I've met them, but have I ever actually lobbied them directly? Not those two. You do get to lobby congresspersons fairly often, but not as often as people think. You're mainly meeting staffers. And in fact, that's better because congressperson might have an expertise in one or two issues. They don't have an expertise across the board of issues they have to deal with. They have staffers who do that, who actually inform them so that they can take a position. So the key is finding out who in that office you want to speak to based on the issue you have at hand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, based on your experience of engaging policymakers,
Yeah.
and that goes, both sides of the aisle, where do you see the most opportunity for, let's say, a deeper collaboration between the U.S. and Japan in, these areas like trade and infrastructure or energy transition?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to make, you know, a recommendation on which is my expertise is not in doing due diligence on whether energy is going to be, better trade or specific infrastructure project.
Mhm.
I can't really determine that. What I can tell you is that members of Congress are hungry for information. They want more people to visit their offices. They want Japanese companies to visit their offices. They want to hear what's going on in their state, in their district, and they want more of it. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a congressperson's district, for instance, Congresswoman Van Dyne, who represents an area around Dallas. And, I handed our fact sheet on Texas, and, she's like, hey, we need to bring all that stuff from Houston up here to Dallas. And so they really want to hear from companies, Japanese companies, American companies. They want business in their district, and they want to hear from you. The best way I approach it is, hey, I can be, kind of an information provider. I can answer questions, you know. So our I've seen some hesitancy of our business groups approaching, the federal government. And I think it's just because they're not used to doing it. But
Mhm.
what I can say is that members of Congress, senators, House members, they want business in their district. I've never found one who didn't want business in their district. And so I encourage, all of our business groups come to DC. I'm happy to set up meetings. They don't have to, they can just be information. This is what we're doing in your state. This is what we do in your district, to build those relationships. They really want that. What I can say is my experience, yes, over time, you know, I mentioned it before, the Trade Association Global Business Alliance that only represents foreign subsidiaries. It was the European companies that really took a lead in that trade association. And so for years, they kind of drove that trade association's policy and advocacy efforts. I now sit on their trade promotion task force, and we'll be meeting next week. I think Ryoji Watanabe is going to send out, if he hasn't already, a survey to all of our business groups asking them, are there any trade or tax issues that are, crucial importance to your department? And what I'll be able to do is take those answers back, go to this task force, and we'll
Mhm.
be able to help the trade association develop their advocacy efforts for the year that will include our priorities. And so what I've seen over the years is Japanese companies, hey, Jamie, just go to these trade associations, take notes and report back. Don't actively engage. You know, don't ask our business teams to come in and go up to the hill. But And that wasn't just us. That was a lot of Japanese companies. And I can tell you one thing that a lot of people don't know is our other Shoga Shosha competitors do not have in-house lobbyists. Companies like Toyota do, but the Mitsuis and the Mitsubishis, they may hire lobbyists. They don't have inside lobbyists.
Right.
So, I just encourage our business departments to get more involved, come up to the Hill. If you don't want to come to DC, invite me to your office and I'll do it in district. Every single congressperson has an office in your district and I can do it there. So,
Okay. That sounds great. It sounds like the opportunity is there for an initial, connection, and then the collaboration can sort of, evolve from there, but you got to take that first step.
yeah, and the earlier the better. I know that, a lot of times government affairs is looked at as a last ditch effort to solve a continuing problem. And if it's a regulatory issue, maybe that can work. It did with Steel Summit and CTPAT, but if it's a lobbying issue where you're worried about a piece of legislation or something, it's better to have a friend and then call on them than to try and make a friend and actually hit them up for a favor once you need them. And so building those relationships are better. I know that anti-dumping issues are a big issue for our company since we're a trading company. And really to engage on those in the long term, the longer you can engage on them, the better. We can always get you a meeting or a contact, but depending on it, and if you wait to the last minute, that can be a lot more expensive. So, building a relationship, having friends, inviting a congressperson to see your facility, those kind of things, that'll make lobbying easier down the road.
Yeah, if there's one thing that Sumitomo has a long history of, it's, being able to forge relationships and keep them going for very long periods of time. We'll switch gears here, and you've been mentoring and teaching and writing about macroeconomics and public policy for a very long time, most of your career. If there was a young professional who's interested in coming into government affairs or working in international business, do you have any skills or habits or matters of thinking that you believe would be best? So for younger professionals who are interested in government affairs and in international business, what skills or habits of thinking do you think matter most if they want to operate effectively across cultures, institutions, political systems, etc.? What would you be looking for?
The biggest thing, I'm older now. There's a six in front of my age. And, I don't know if it's mentoring. I guess I'm just around, so I have more experience. But, I sit on a number of boards and I do mentor people, executives on those boards. And here, the biggest thing is to stay curious, to ask questions. If you're not curious about what's going on, you'll fall into a rut. And so the thing is and the way to stay curious, I know AI is taking over everything, but in government affairs and advocacy, the way to stay curious is to meet people face to face. If that's not you and you want to get into advocacy, you got to break out of that, that kind of nervousness or hesitancy right away. People want to meet you, they want to engage, they want to talk. They don't want to sit on their computer and ask AI the answer. We've had, and I'm on this one group, the Conference Board's Government Relations Executive Council. And what it is it's executives from that are in government affairs from the biggest companies in the world. And we get together 3 or 4 times a year just to share best practices. And we've had AI speakers come in. And they'll say, you guys are lucky as lobbyists because your AI they can do that legislative research. They can do that regulatory research. They can summarize a bill. You don't have to have your law firm do that anymore, right? But what they can't do is walk up to Capitol Hill, sit down, shake someone's hand, and deliver an emotional connection or forge a relationship. And so, one of the things I've always found interesting is I remember the coolest thing when I was a kid was I got a phone in my room. I didn't have my own line, but I had a phone. And so you could call somebody. Now that everybody has a phone in their pocket, they won't call anybody. They won't even do that. They'll just text, right? They'll text and they'll say, or they'll email, not even email now, it's just text. No, they didn't text me back. Well, in government affairs and advocacy, yeah, you got to meet them face to face. But next, you got to make a phone call. Don't allow that, that anxiety about talking to people directly affect you. People need to remember you if you're going to be successful in advocacy. And I don't know how you do that. Maybe you always wear the same tie or something, but they have to see you and they have to hear you. So don't be afraid of face to face or voice to voice connections, and always stay curious. That's what a young person should do.
No, that's really good advice. And I imagine it can be really challenging when you feel like you have a generation or so coming up who are their personal skills are somewhat challenged because of the technology and how people are quote connecting with each other when in fact they aren't really connecting with each other. I mean, a person can be on 5 or 6 different social media platforms and still never talk to the people that they are supposedly connected to.
Yeah, I mean, I can say here, we always, not always, but we hire interns fairly regularly throughout the year. So we may have, one intern each semester. And the one intern we hired on a row was the most engaging and most curious, and he's become a fabulous, fantastic employee. Others were great at doing one-off projects, but that's not how you're going to break in. You're going to do great work, on a project, but you're not going to make an impression. And so
Yeah.
it's about asking questions, staying curious, and engaging people. That's what people crave, is that experience.
You can't shake somebody's hand
Absolutely.
unless you're right there.
Yep.
So that's very good advice. And that's sort of the way it's been in Washington for a very long time, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, yeah. And so it's also how a lot of lobbyists got a bad name, right? Is through some of those personal connections. I have this
Yeah.
old graphic, I know this is a podcast, but I have this graphic that says, what my mom thinks I do, and it's like marching up Capitol Hill, what my friends think I do, and that's having drinks all the day, all the time, right? What the public thinks I do, that's handing money over to politicians, right? You know, what my competitors think I do, and that's like, doing something environmentally, smokestacks, just throwing pollution up in the air. And then it's like, what do you really do? And it's walking down a hall, meeting a staffer, introducing yourself, trying to get a connection with them so that they'll remember you by face the next time, not just by your business card. I know they're important, but you have to make that impression, and that's what lobbyists do. I think, one of the things that's kind of interesting, at least for me, is last year was the biggest year in history in federal lobbying. I think it was over $5 billion was spent. There is, historically, there's between, I can check on that 5 billion, but I think it was, I do know it was the biggest year of lobbying spend in history. There's generally 12 to 13,000 federal lobbyists. That doesn't include state lobbyists, and it doesn't include shadow lobbying. Those are, people who don't spend the official amount of time on lobbying issues to have to register. That's
Yeah.
12 to 13,000 registered, and last year it went over 13,000. And so, when you talk to staffers on the Hill and you ask them what makes an impression, they go, as soon as we get 2 letters that say the exact same thing, we know it's an email campaign and we don't even look at it. And so, the way to break through of those 12 or 13,000 is that you got to meet them. You have to, yeah, you send the follow-up email, but you meet them in person first. If they're appearing at a trade association meeting, you go there to that meeting and you sit so they can see you. And then after the meeting, you go up and you re-hand them the business card, and then you set up a meeting. So,
And, there's so much value in that. Well, Jamie, thank you so much. Speaking of value, you're a valued member of our team. You and I have known each other for a long time, and it's always a pleasure to get to talk to you about what's going on. So thank you very much for talking to us about your career and what's going on.
absolutely. Thanks for having me. And to all those people listening out there, go to scoadc.com, read the blog, and also don't be afraid to come to the DC office.
No problem. All right. Thank you again, Jamie.
Thanks. All right.